Wake up in the mud it begins, as it so often did, with the slow brightness of a cloud-filtered dawn pressing through the slats of a wooden shutter. You are awake, but not rested. Not truly. Your body aches. You slept not in a bed, but upon a low mat of straw, some of it fresh, most of it not. There are bugs in the straw, of course. Not many, but enough. Tiny things. Click-legged and persistent. You brush one from your neck, absently. You're used to it by now, the air smells, like it always does. Damp wool, wood smoke from the hearth, which has long since gone cold. And outside the rough timber walls, the smell of animals. They're just beyond the door. Sometimes during cold weeks, they're not even beyond it, just across the room. A goat, maybe. A piglet, sharing your warmth and your fleas. This is your morning. You rise slowly, not because you are lazy, but because the straw has stiffened your joints. The floor beneath you is packed earth, the color of dried blood, cracked and cool. It sucks. The warmth from your bare feet, the boards above your head are low and warped. If you're tall, and not many are, you must stoop. There's no window, only the open slat where the dawn leaks through. It's gray out there. It's often gray outside. Your neighbors are stirring too. The sounds of early life in the 14th century are never sudden. They are soft and repetitive. A rooster crowing, yes, but also the long sigh of wood being chopped, the thick scrape of a door being dragged open, a cough, then another, someone clearing their throat with a loud hawk and spit, a cartwheel creaking. And always, somewhere, a baby crying. The village is small. Most are. Fewer than 200 souls, all told. You know them, not just their names, but the way they walk, the way they smell, the way they curse under their breath when something goes wrong, which it often does. You may live in Kent, or York, or the wetter folds of Normandy. It doesn't matter. These mornings are all alike. Inside your home, the ceiling is dark with soot. A low line of blackness where the cooking smoke has settled, year after year. No chimney, only a hole in the roof where heat and prayers both escape. The thatch drips sometimes, especially in spring. Your clothes are where you left them, in a pile beside the hearth. You slept in your undertunic because that's what you do. There's no closet, no chest of drawers, just wool, linen, and whatever laces you've mended. You dress slowly, carefully. Your tunic smells faintly of damp hay. It is coarse. It scratches just a little, but not enough to mind. Your belt is leather, cracked and darkened by years of sweat and use. You tie it with a kind of muscle memory, the same way you've done every morning since you were old enough to reach your waist. You are likely not very clean, but no one is. Your hands are rough, with permanent dirt lining the beds of your nails. Your feet are tougher than they look. You can walk barefoot on cobblestones, on soil, on uneven boards. But today you'll wear shoes. Thin leather turn shoes. They don't keep water out, but they do keep thorns from slicing your heel. Breakfast is simple. If you have bread, you eat bread. Stale, perhaps. Baked 4 days ago, or more. If there's cheese, it is hard and pale. You eat quietly, without ceremony, on a stool beside the hearth. If you're lucky, someone brings you a weak ale to wash. It down, brewed by your neighbor, thick with grains, safer than the water from the well. You chew slowly, not by choice. It just takes a long time. The bread is dense, hearty. There are little bits of grit in it, from the millstones. You've stopped noticing, mostly. Outside, the mud is still fresh from last night's rain. The rain is constant, in this time of the world, either falling or threatening to. The ground sucks at your shoes as you step out. That sound, the slow squelch, has no words in Latin or French, but it is eternal. A wet reminder that the land owns you, not the other way around. Across the lane, a woman pours slop into a trough. A boy chases a chicken. Someone is hammering something softly, rhythmically. A cooper at work, perhaps. The sound echoes down the narrow dirt road like a heartbeat. This is not a special day. It is not a festival. There is no joust, no plague, cart, no heretic burning. That's the trick of the Middle Ages. It's not all pageantry or pestilence. Mostly it's just this. Mornings like this, feet in the mud, a cough in the distance, a pot boiling over. There's no such thing as privacy. Doors are never locked. Rooms are always shared. You've heard your parents sleep. You've seen your siblings born. You will hear your neighbors die. And they, in turn, will one day hear you. The sun, such as it is, climbs higher. But the light remains the same, filtered, pale, indifferent. You pass the church. You always pass the church. It is not grand. No spire, no stained glass. Just gray stone, lichen darkened, and a door that always groans when opened. The bell may toll today, or not. If it does, it will mark one of two things, a wedding or a death. There's not much difference, really. Both are attended. Both end in feasting. Both are followed by silence. You keep walking. Past the smithy. Past the low well with its thick rope and wood-rimmed pail. Past the homes that look like yours. They all do. You are headed to the fields or to the kill or to the kitchen. You are going somewhere, but not far. Never far. The days blur. But years. This is not the life of a knight. Or a monk. Or a lady in a tower. This is the life of almost everyone else. The ones whose names don't make it into books. The ones who lived and died in the folds of history, folded in straw mats, under sagging thatch, with fingers cracked from cold and soil, and you are one of them. There's a comfort in the sameness, a kind of dull security. You know where your food will come from. If not today, then tomorrow. You know what your tools feel like in your hand. You know what the evening will sound like, the same as last night. A low fire, a few stories, the creak of a bench, then sleep, then dreams, then another morning, wake up, stretch, scratch, begin again. The Middle Ages were not all war and wonder. They were mostly this. And this, in its own quiet way, was brutal. But there's more, because if you think the morning was rough, you haven't yet heard the coughs. You were always a little bit sick. There's a sound that drifts through every corner of a medieval village. It is not the call of the church bell, though that rings often. Not the crow of the rooster, though that too is frequent. And familiar. No, it is something lower. Something softer. A dry, persistent sound that rarely lifts its tone. It is the human cough. Not the alarming bark of a sudden illness, but the slow, scraping exhale of a chest that never quite clears. It is everywhere. You hear it while stirring the morning pot. You hear it while digging turnips from the cold earth. You hear it at night, drifting through the thin wall of timber and daub, like wind against an attic rafter. People cough here. All of them, and nearly all the time. You are one of them. The cough comes and goes. In winter, it deepens, nestling into your chest like a stubborn lodger. You don't call it a sickness. Not exactly. Sickness is something else. A fever that rages, or a rash that spreads. What you have is more like a condition. Something that's simply there. A companion. A rough patch in the throat. A wheeze when bending. A slow ache behind the eyes when the weather shifts. There's no doctor to visit, and even if there were, you would not trust him. The last one bled a man who had only indigestion. He died quietly by the fire the next day, too weak to stand. So instead, you chew bitter herbs wrapped in linen or steep them in water and drink it warm. If the fire is lit and the wood is dry and the pot is clean enough, everyone has their own mixture. Mugwort for the breath, elderflower for the joints, sage for strength. These plants are not taken with ceremony nor with faith. They are simply what you have. What your mother gave you when your nose ran thick in spring. What her mother gave her. Some women know more than others. The midwife, perhaps, or the hedge healer who lives just beyond the orchard line. She smells of dried bark and damp fur. Her fingers are stained green from pressing leaves. She does not speak quickly, and she rarely smiles, but when she does, Her teeth are whole, which is rare enough to notice. Still, herbs cannot mend everything. If your leg becomes infected from a cart accident, or a fall in the wet barn, or a poorly honed scythe, you must hope it swells slowly. There is no antiseptic, no soap beyond the lye and ash that burn your skin as much as they cleanse. No bandage that does not chafe. An untreated wound might linger for weeks. A finger, once broken, stays broken. It sets on its own, at an odd angle, and you learn to use your hand a little differently. This is normal. Even children are not spared the long, slow illnesses. They do not run as often as you imagine. Their energy fades quickly. In the summer sun, they are more lively, of course. But in the cold, their noses run raw. Their eyes water. They wheeze. When laughing too hard, they cough until their small bodies bend in half. You do not panic. It is simply how it is. You tuck them under a coarse wool blanket, scratchy, always scratchy, and press your lips to their forehead. Warm, but not too warm. You hope. You listen for their breathing as they sleep beside you. It is hard to rest when a child breathes like a bellows. Some people are always tired. They do not call it fatigue or melancholy or anything so precise. They say things like, she slowed down, or his bones are heavy. They shuffle to the fields anyway. Work does not wait for good health. The fire must be stoked. The rye must be threshed. No one rests unless they cannot rise. And even then, someone will nudge them from their mat and say, just a little help with the cart. And they do it, coughing all the while, because saying no is not part of life here. Because no one wants to be thought of as idle. You are always a little bit sick. So is everyone. The old man who sharpens knives by the edge of the path, he sniffs constantly, one side of his nose always clogged. The washerwoman, her hands red and cracked from cold and soap, her breath loud and uneven. Even the priest, who walks the village slowly, muttering Latin verses with a hoarse and flaking voice. He has no power to heal, and he knows it. But he says the right words at the right time, and sometimes that is enough to calm a frightened mother or soothe a man trembling in fever. There is occasionally something worse, a deeper sickness, a rot, a sweat, a blackening. These come without warning. A man may feel fine in the morning, and by evening his lips are blue. A girl may skip stones at dawn, and by night she lies quiet, wrapped in all the blankets you can find, shivering like a leaf. These deaths are not common, but they are not rare. People die of fevers, of coughs that turn to something else, of a rash that becomes a sore that will not close. The body fails in many ways, and without medicine, real medicine, the difference between an illness and a death is just luck. You do not understand the cause. No one does. Some say it is the air, bad humors rising from swamps or dung heaps. Others say it is God's will, or the devil's, or the punishment for a sin you didn't know you'd committed. The truth is simpler. The world is not clean. The water carries things you cannot see. The food rots faster than it should. Rats climb over everything. And your hands, callous though they are, touch so many things. Soil, flesh, waste, that they are never truly clean. Still, there are ways to feel better, even if not well. You sit by the hearth. You drink something warm, even if it's just boiled grain and water. Someone places a wet cloth on your forehead. It cools, briefly. You fall asleep in fits, waking not by noise, but by the dull pulse in your head, or the damp cough behind your tongue. You do not fear death, not in these moments. You simply wait for the body to do what it does, recover or not. And slowly, over days, the cough lessens. The ache lifts. You eat more, you smile once. Just a twitch at the corner of your mouth. Life returns, but not full health. That never quite comes. There's always something. A wheeze, a limp, a tremor in the hand that never steadies. Because in the Middle Ages, no one is truly well. There are no healthy bodies. Only bodies in motion. Bodies that endure. That survive in spite of themselves. The measure of your strength is not whether you are pain-free, but whether you can carry the sack of grain up the hill anyway. Whether you can rise from your mat before sunrise. Whether you can still swing the axe. Even if your shoulder clicks each time, and so life continues, a village full of quiet ailments. A population of persistent coughers, slow walkers, heavy breathers. It is not dramatic. It is not tragic. It simply is. You live among sickness, but also among care. Your neighbor brings broth. Your sister helps you lift the pot. A child strokes your hand when you sleep. There is no medicine, but there is presence, a closeness, a kind of healing that does not cure, but comforts. That, too, is medieval life, It is not glamorous, but it is full. Not of health, but of humanity. And when you wake on the 5th day, with a clearer head and a quieter chest, you do not rejoice. You simply rise, put on your tunic, step into your cold shoes, and begin again. You probably never bathe. You wake, as usual, beneath a blanket that smells faintly of wood smoke. Old wool, and you. You do not notice it, not really. The scent has long since folded into your senses, like the dimness of the cottage or the soft creak of the beams above your bed. You've grown used to the feeling of a slightly damp tunic against your chest, the gentle itch where your hair meets your scalp, the oily weight in the hollow of your neck. You've grown used to all of it, and so has everyone else. That is the quiet, enduring truth of medieval cleanliness. Not that you are dirty, but that you do not expect anything else. Bathing for most is not a daily act. It is not even a weekly one. It is instead a rare undertaking, something done when the season allows or when an occasion demands it, perhaps before a feast day or before a wedding or after the birth of a child. You do not wake and think, oh, F washing. You wake and think of warmth, of breakfast, of the small tasks that form the shape of your life. Cleanliness is not a virtue here. Survival is not to bathe requires effort. First, the water must be hauled from the well, usually. The bucket is heavy. The rope slips in your hands. The water itself is cold, bone cold, spring cold, clear, but never quite clean. And then it must be heated, if you're lucky, in a blackened iron pot over a fire that must be coaxed into life with last night's coals. It takes time. It takes firewood, which is too precious to waste. And once the water is warm, lukewarm, not steaming, you must pour it into a basin or a shallow tub, or sometimes just ladle it over your body as you crouch, shivering, beside the hearth. You are not alone, even when bathing. There is no privacy, no tile bathroom, no locked door. If you are a servant, you may be scrubbed by someone else. If you are a mother, you may be bathing your child from the same water you use for your own limbs. Bathing is not sensual or relaxing or perfumed. It is functional. It is clumsy. It is chilly. There is always a draft. There is always a sense of hurrying. You wash the parts that matter: hands, feet, face, under the arms, if the water lasts. You do not linger. Soap, if you have it, is rough. Made from ash and animal fat, it stings the skin and leaves behind a faintly sour smell. Most days, you do not use it. Instead, you might rub your body with a cloth soaked in herbs, rosemary perhaps, or lavender if it's the right time of year. The scent is fleeting, the residue is not. Or you scrape your skin with a dry rag, hoping to lift the dust and grease without peeling your flesh. Your clothes are rarely washed, not for lack of desire, but for lack of resources. To wash a tunic properly requires water, soap, a strong arm, and hours of scrubbing. Then it must be dried, a challenge in the damp air of your village, where the sun is fickle and the hearth is already overworked. So you wear your garments again. And again, you shake the crumbs from them in the morning. You hang them in the breeze when the smell becomes too much. Sometimes you beat them with a stick to loosen the filth, but mostly you endure them, stiff at the cuffs, yellowing beneath the arms. Slick with old oil when he meets the cloth, the wool itches, always. whether it's spun fine or coarse, dyed or plain. It holds smells the way bark holds. Moss, the scent of smoke, sweat, tallow, and time. Linen is better, if you can afford it. Smoother, quieter, but linen stains and tears and must be mended often. And so most wear wool. You wear wool. Everyone you know wears wool. The babies wear wool. The elders wear wool. And in summer you sweat into it. And in winter you sweat into it more, under layers, beneath cloaks, huddled beside fires that only warm one side of your body at a time. Hair is another matter. If you are a woman, your hair is likely long, bound in a braid or tucked beneath a linen cap. If you are a man, it may be cropped short, or it may be shaggy, depending on your station, your trade, your place in the pecking order, but it is not washed often. Perhaps a rinse with rainwater now and then, perhaps rubbed with herbs. Combs exist, but are handmade and few. You may share one with your family. You may never have one at all. The scalp itches sometimes. Especially in spring, you check for lice by candlelight if there's time. If there's patience, you pick them out one by one with your fingernails. You squint, you sigh, you move on. They return. They always return. And the smell, that low, musky scent of the human body, is not offensive here. It is ordinary. It is a part of life. The smell of a man after a day in the fields. The smell of a woman who has stirred the hearth for hours. The smell of a child's skin after sleep. These are not foul. They are familiar. They are part of the landscape, like wet wood or boiling broth, or the faint tang of sheep dung that rides the wind from the common pasture. Clean, by modern standards, is a dream, a myth. No one pursues it. No one expects it. Public bathhouses once existed in the larger towns in the earlier centuries, but they are fading now. Some have been closed by decree, their morals questioned by the church. Others simply rotted, untended. Still others were destroyed during outbreaks of plague, for fear that steam and flesh might carry the miasma deeper. If you are a peasant, you have likely never been to one. If you are a merchant, you may remember them from youth. A warm tub, a scrape of soap, a moment of relief, but not anymore. Those comforts are rare now, suspicious even. To scrub too, much is to disturb the balance of the body's humors. Or so some believe. The skin must retain its oils, they say. The pores must remain sealed against the damp and the chill dot, and so the dirt remains. It becomes a part of you. It lines your nails. It darkens the creases behind your knees. It smudges your collar. It stains your palms, and you stop trying to. Scrub it out. Children grow into adults without ever knowing what it feels like to be truly clean. The smell of heated skin under clear water is not something they have known. You have not known it either. You cannot miss what you've never felt. You carry your skin like armor, layered with the days and months of effort and endurance. You wear it proudly, even when it stings. There's a certain humility in it, this acceptance of the body's slow decay. A certain peace, even. When you lie beside the hearth at night, wrapped in the same blanket as the night before, you are not troubled by your scent, nor by the scent of the others. The cottage breathes with you. All its smells, boiled leeks, sheep wool, wood ash, damp feet, gather into something cohesive, something warm, something human. And in the quiet hours, when the fire is no more than an orange line beneath a heap of ash, you scratch an elbow, or rub your scalp, or stretch your legs against the stiff sheet, and you do not long for a bath. You long for rest. Tomorrow will bring more dust, more sweat, more wool, more effort. The body will grow heavier, not lighter, and the scent of your labor will thicken. But that is life. Cleanliness is not the point. Survival is. Your teeth where disaster begins. Not with a scream or a spasm, but with something far smaller. A twitch, a twinge, a flicker of pain in the jaw as you chew your first bite of morning bread. The bread, like always, is hard, dense, aged a few days past its prime. You've soaked it briefly in ale to soften the edges, but the crust still. bites back. And so, as your molars press down with patient insistence, you feel it, the dull throb at the base of one tooth. Low pulsing, like something alive buried deep in your gums. You do not flinch. You do not stop eating. You simply chew more slowly. You've done this before. You will do it again. Dental pain in the Middle Ages is not sudden. It is creeping. Familiar. Inevitable. From the moment your milk teeth fall away and your adult teeth push through, they begin the long process of erosion, of damage, of slow collapse. There are no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no floss. Your mouth is not a place of cleanliness. It is a cave, dark and sour, where grit and food and time all conspire together to undo you. The act of chewing alone is hazardous. Your bread, your primary food, is ground in stone mills, large, circular corns, worn smooth by centuries of use. But as the stones grind grain into flour, they grind themselves, too. Tiny shards, invisible, almost splinter into the flour. They are baked directly into the loaves. And so each bite carries with it not only grain and air and salt, but mineral grit, sand, dust, little razors hidden in the crumb, and your teeth, already softened by time and wear, cannot withstand this forever. They chip, they crack, they wear flat. The enamel thins and gives way. The nerves beneath, pink, wet, desperate, begin to feel everything. You chew slowly. Carefully, you favor one side. You tear food with your fingers first, breaking it down into the smallest manageable piece. You avoid meat with gristle. You let your broth cool, lest the heat stir some sleeping pain awake that there's no relief. Not really. You might swish your mouth with vinegar sharp, sour, biting, in hopes it will cleanse the rot. Or perhaps with salt water, warmed briefly, over the hearth. Some swear by mint, others by sage. But these are comforts, not cures. If the truth is bad, truly bad, you know the options are few. You will live with it. Or you will have it pulled. Tooth pulling is not a profession. Not exactly. A blacksmith might do it, if you ask. A barber, if one visits the village. A priest, perhaps, if his hands are steady and his conscience allows. There are no tools designed for the purpose. Only tongs, or knives, or bare fingers. Wrapped in cloth, you sit on a stool, you grip the legs, you breathe shallowly. A prayer is said, usually not to ease the pain, but to settle the soul. Then the tooth is gripped, twisted, yanked. If it is loose, it may come quickly. If not, it may crack, split, leave behind a piece of root, blackened and raw. The bleeding is steady. The pain is immense. But when it's done, when the hole is empty and the cloth is pressed between your lips, there's a strange kind of quiet. The body is still. The agony is known. The uncertainty is gone. Most endure their teeth in silence. You learn to live with the ache. It pulses beneath your speech. It hums behind your jaw when you lie in bed. Sometimes it reaches your ears. Sometimes it wakes you. And yet you continue to eat. You must. Hunger is worse than pain. You sip gruel. You suck marrow. You break crusts with the heel of your hand. You chew on the left or the right, depending on the season of your pain. Children lose their baby teeth. The same as today, slowly, with excitement and discomfort. But there's no tooth fairy, no little coins beneath the straw mat. A child may show their lost tooth to a parent with a kind of wonder. It may be tossed into the hearth or the ditch or tucked in a pouch as a charm, but the teeth that come in afterward are nothing to celebrate. They are tools, temporary. Prey to time.rot is common, a black spot, a soft crater. A sickly sweet odor when the mouth is opened. You smell it in others, and they smell it in you. No one mentions it. It is rude to speak of breath. Better to look away, to smile with closed lips, to nod politely and let the moment pass. Infections are quiet at. First, a swelling in the jaw, a heat behind the cheekbone. The skin becomes tight, the tongue feels thick. Eventually, the face may swell on one side. A grotesque ballooning that disfigures the features and brings a kind of fevered confusion. Some die. From this, the poison travels inward, the blood darkens, the breath shortens. They slip into sleep, and then beyond it, others survive, disfigured, but whole. They return to work. They stop chewing meat. They favor soups and eggs and soft roots. They live, but not without pain. Gold teeth are not a fantasy of this time. No one dreams of shining replacements. There are no implants, no fillings, no straightening of crooked rows. If your teeth come in slanted, they stay that way. If a gap opens, it becomes part of your smile. If a molar falls out, the others shift to fill the space. The mouth is not a site of vanity. It is a site of function or dysfunction. You use it until it stops working. And even among the well-fed, the rich, the noble, toothaches do not discriminate. Monarchs have wailed in castles, clutching their cheeks, begging their apothecaries for balm or wine or death. Letters survived describing the agony. Powdered coral was used. Crushed pearls, burnt sage and vinegar. A fragment of opium if you had access to trade routes and knew who to ask, but nothing truly worked. The ache always returned. It always returns dot in the fields. You sometimes pause in your labor, not for the sun, not for the wind, but for the way your jaw throbs as you bite into an apple. You spit it out, you try again, more gently. Eventually you set it aside. You drink instead, ale, thin and sour. It soothes, briefly. You get back to work. No one lives into old age with a full mouth. Of teeth, by 40 your molars are worn flat. By 50 your front teeth may be gone entirely. You gum your bread, you sip your stew. You smile less, not from sadness, but from practicality. The mouth becomes something internal, something hidden. You speak softly, you chew quietly. You rest your tongue in the gaps, and at night, lying beside the fire, you press a hand to your cheek. You feel the slow thump of your jaw beneath your skin. You do not cry. There's no point. The pain is as familiar as your own name. You simply wait. Sleep, if you can, or drift in and out of waking, tasting blood now and then, dreaming of soft things. Milk, perhaps, a peach, bread without grit. A world where food is kind, but that world is not this one. This one is coarse, hard, filled with chewing that hurts and eating that injures, and yet you do eat dot, and you do live dot, and tomorrow. You'll chew again. Water could kill you. You wake with a dry mouth. Not parched, not yet, but dry in a way that feels familiar. The kind of thirst that begins as a tickle at the back of the throat, then spreads forward, coating the tongue in a faint film. It's the result of the fire's smoke, of sleeping near wool, of breathing through your mouth during fitful, shallow rest. The air is cool this morning, but still, you are thirsty. And though there's water in your world, there's very little of. You truly trust. The water comes from a well, mostly. Dug decades ago, maybe longer, by hands now folded into soil. A low stone ring with a wooden beam across the top. The rope is damp. The bucket, splintered and dark with moss around the handle. When you approach, you always pause, not out of reverence, but out of wariness. You listen. You look down into the dark. You wonder what might be living there, what might be rotting there. You've heard stories. Everyone has. Rats falling in. A dead bird bobbing just below the surface. Sometimes people talk about curses, spirits in the well. But it's not spirits you worry about. It's what the eye cannot see. It's what the gut will feel hours later. You lower the bucket slowly, hand over hand. The rope creaks softly, like an old man's knees. Then a splash. Then stillness. You raise it again, arm muscles working in silence, pulling up. Water that is colder than your skin, with a faint sheen that sometimes dances on its surface. It smells slightly metallic. Or maybe it's just old wooden stone. You don't know. You tip the water into a clay jug. Some use a cloth to strain it. Most don't bother. If you've grown up drinking it, you're probably used to the taste and to the risk. Because sometimes, even when the water looks clear, it still turns against you. A stomach cramp that starts in the early evening, a heat in the belly, then hours in the darkness, doubled over, whispering prayers you half remember. You sweat, you shiver, you groan quietly so as not to wake the others. And if you're lucky, it passes by morning. If you're not, you might not get up at all. This is why most people don't drink plain water. Instead, there is ale. Not the strong kind that kings drink from jewel rimmed droplets, but something else. Small ale, they call it. Thin, light, sometimes barely fermented. Brewed at home in copper pots and wooden barrels. It is part of the rhythm of life here. The grain is boiled, steeped, cooled, and left to ferment, not for flavor, but for safety. The heat kills what the well could not. The fermentation seals the rest. It is a drink for the living, for the cautious, for the poor. Children drink it. Old women drink it. Monks, laborers, bakers, shepherds, everyone. It is part of breakfast, part of supper, part of everything in between. It doesn't make you drunk, not unless you drink too much of it. But it does keep you upright, keeps your belly still, keeps you working, and there's something soothing about it. A mug passed between rough hands, a shared cup among siblings. The scent of warm grain and faint bitterness rising with the morning. Steam. You don't love it, you don't crave it, but you trust it. And that here is everything. Rainwater is another source, but only if you catch it yourself. Some villages have barrels placed beneath thatched eaves, where the rain trickles down the slope of the roof and into waiting wooden mouths. But the roof is not clean. Birds roost there. Smoke drifts upward and settles. Mold forms in the thatch, invisible until it collapses. So the water that comes down is already tainted by what it passes over. It can be used to wash, maybe, to soak herbs, to clean tools. But to drink it raw, not unless you're desperate. Not unless it's been boiled, and even then, streams and rivers offer no more assurance. They run through fields where animals graze, where people bathe, where waste is emptied from pots and basins. You can see it sometimes, a greasy film on the surface, a floating clump of something unnameable. Fish grow sick in those streams. Children wade in and come out with rashes. The water moves, but it does not cleanse. The monks in their cloisters have better options. Some have spring-fed conduits, carefully built with stone channels and clay. Linings, the water flows slowly through the gardens and into shallow pools. It is clearer, cooler, steadier, and it is watched, maintained by men who take pride in precision. But you are not a monk. You are not behind stone walls. You are here with the rest, standing beside a mossy well, wondering whether today's water will betray you. Boiling is a solution, but firewood is limited. Every log burned for boiling is a log not used for cooking or heating. In winter, that calculation becomes even harder. So you make choices, you boil some things. Now, you take your chances. You hope the gods or the spirits or the humors or just the roll of luck will be kind this time. There are times of year when water becomes especially dangerous. Late summer, especially when the heat thickens and the water stagnates. When animals drink from the same pools and leave behind disease. When drought forces the whole village to share one failing well. When desperation leads people to drink from wherever they can find it. Puddles, barrels, ditches, and then the fevers come. The belly sickness, the wasting. Whole households struck down within days. The priest walks from door to door, reciting the same words in the same voice, laying fingers on foreheads that burn, then cool. There are more burials that week, more quiet processions, more fresh graves, and yet there is still water, because you must drink something, because the body needs it, no matter how unsafe it feels, so you sip slowly. You pour your ale from a jug that smells of barley and wood. You pray over your well. You strain your water through cloth that's been rinsed too many times to be clean. You do not trust what you drink, but you drink it anyway. There is no solution, only survival, only strategies. Only habits passed down by people who outlived their neighbors by learning which buckets to empty and which to leave alone. And if you are lucky, if today is a day when the water sits quiet in your belly and you work, you walk, you drink again at noon. And again at dusk. There's no celebration. No moment of thanks. You simply live. And that here is enough. Food was monotonous. The meal is ready. Or rather, it is done cooking. Ready is another matter. It doesn't smell good, not exactly. It smells familiar. The way the cottage always smells after the fire's been fed, when the lid of the pot has been lifted and the steam rolls out into the air, thick, soft, and vaguely sour. A mixture of boiled grain, old salt, and whatever root vegetable could be pried from the frostbitten ground this morning. You've eaten it before. You'll eat it again. And you'll do so without complaint. Because there's nothing else. The bowl in front of you is wooden, shallow, worn smooth by years of use and washing that never quite cleans. The spoon is yours, not by ownership, but by habit. You carved it long ago, or someone gave it to you. It doesn't matter. It's part of you now. The edge is dull. The handle is cracked. It scrapes softly along the inside of the bowl with each bite. You eat slowly, not because the meal is hot, but because the slower you eat, the longer it lasts. What you are eating could be porridge, could be pottage, could be both. The difference is mostly academic. Both begin with grains, barley, rye, oats, whatever was stored in the sacks above the hearth, assuming the rats haven't chewed through them. These grains are soaked, boiled, stirred, and seasoned with whatever can be spared. A chopped onion, maybe a few strips of kale, a dried pea that refused to soften. Sometimes a marrow bone is added, its faint richness leaching into the stew if the fire is hot enough. But there is no meat today. There wasn't any yesterday either. Maybe next week if a hen goes lame or a piglet dies too soon. Until then, you eat this. The taste is not unpleasant. It's simply there, warm and heavy on the tongue, slightly earthy, a little bitter at the bottom. It fills the stomach, and that is its only duty. Flavor is a luxury, not a priority. And so you eat in silence. The sound of chewing, of swallowing, of breath through the nose. These are the sounds of dinner. No clinking cutlery. No clatter of plates. Just the slow, steady consumption of sameness. Bread is served if there's any left. It is dark, dense, heavy as a stone, and nearly as dry. You tear off a piece with your hands. There's no knife. The crust is tough, the inside crumb rough with grit from the millstones. You chew carefully. Slowly. The bread is stale, but it softens with each chew. If you have ale, you dip the bread in it. If you have broth, you let the bread sink. You eat with your fingers. You lick them clean, that it is the same every day. Perhaps not exactly. Some days it is leeks instead of cabbage. Some days a little. Cheese, dry and sharp and crumbly. On feast days, if you're lucky, an egg, but mostly the food does not surprise. And you do not expect it to. There are no spices beyond salt, and salt itself is precious, hoarded, traded, measured by. The pinch. Sugar is unknown. Butter is rare. You eat to continue. That is enough. Hunger is not a stranger here. It lives beside you. It hums quietly in your belly between meals. It tightens the skin around your waist in lean seasons. There are days, whole weeks, where the meal's thin, a watery gruel instead of porridge, a handful of raw greens in spring, barely rinsed. Bitter to the taste, but necessary. You know how to wait. You know how to stretch. You drink more ale. You chew slowly. You breathe deeply, letting the weight of your clothing trick the mind into feeling full. Feast days come, now and then, with bells and fasting beforehand. You do not eat meat for weeks. Then suddenly, on saint days, holy days, market days, there's a roast, or a pie, or a jug of something sweet and dark. It feels like a dream. Your body doesn't quite know what to do with richness. Your stomach turns, protests, then quiets. But those days are rare, and they pass quickly. The next morning it is back to bread, back to cabbage, back to the scrape. Of the spoon, the monotony is not just in flavor, but in rhythm. Meals happen at the same time. if they happen at all. One at midday, one near sunset. No snacks, no picking between, no markets filled with variety. Food comes from the land, from the larder, from what can be grown or bartered. You plan each season as though your life depends on it, because it does dot, and in years when the harvest fails. When the rains come too hard or the frost comes too soon, the monotony becomes something sharper. It becomes desperation. The pottage grows thinner. The bread vanishes. The animals are cold early. You dig up weeds and mash them into paste. You strip bark from trees and boil it until it softens, just to feel something in your mouth. These are hungry years. And they leave their mark on the bones, on the skin, on the memory. The village walks slower. The children cry more. The bell tolls often. But when food is steady, even if boring, it is a blessing, a bowl of something warm, a loaf that holds its shape, a root cellar not yet empty. These things are not celebrations, but they are safety. They are the thread that keeps you moving. There is no table, not in the way we think of them now. Perhaps a plank balanced on barrels, perhaps just the floor. You sit where you can. You eat with your hands. You pass the bowl if someone else needs it. There is no etiquette, but there is order. The old eat first, or the father, or the priest. If he is present, the children wait. The dogs whine outside. You do not talk much while eating. Words are for after, or before. Now it is simply chewing, swallowing, wiping your mouth on your sleeve, letting the warmth reach your center. And then when it's done, scraping the bowl clean and setting it by the door, tomorrow it will be used again. And it will hold the same thing, nearly always. You do not mind. You cannot afford to mind. Because here in this world, the true enemy is not bad food. It is no food. And so sameness is not suffering. It is security dot. And when the last spoonful is gone, and the pot is scraped bare, and the hearth flickers low, you sit back. Your stomach is not full, but it is quiet. That too is enough. Childbirth was a gamble. The room is dim. Not quiet, not completely, but muffled as though the air itself has learned to hush. A single candle flickers near the far wall, its wax sagging gently onto the wooden ledge beneath. The shutters are drawn, though it is still daytime. The fire is low, but steady, fed sparingly so as not to overheat the space. There is a thick woolen hush to everything. The scent of herbs hangs in the air, mugwort maybe, or lavender. Something bitter, something meant to ease what can't truly be eased. And in the center of the room, on a low, straw-stuffed bed, a woman is in labor dot. She has been here since before dawn, or maybe since the day before. Time blurs in rooms like this. The candle burned once, was replaced, and now burns again. There is a midwife kneeling beside her, not a doctor. There are no doctors here, only women, older mostly, who have seen enough births to know what is normal and what is not. Her hands are cracked, strong, smeared with a paste of crushed garlic. And goose grease rubbed onto her palms earlier, not because it works, but because it might. The woman breathes through clenched teeth. She does not scream out loudly. Screaming is thought to be dangerous. It uses the breath. It weakens the mother. And so she moans softly, steadily, as though each contraction is a wave that must be ridden in silence. The sounds she makes are half sobs, half prayers. There is a bowl beside the bed, filled with water that has long since cooled. A cloth, stained and wrung out many times, rests in it like an exhausted bird. The midwife dabs the woman's brow. Her hair is soaked. Her eyes are closed. The room smells of blood already. Just a little, not sharp yet. But it's there beneath the smoke, beneath the herbs, beneath the sour sweat of effort. The scent of something being torn open. Something on the edge of arriving or ending dot. She's not the first to give birth here. The mattress knows this pain. The boards beneath the bed are stained in places. No one speaks of it. No one needs to. Everyone knows how common this is. How ordinary. How dangerous, Dot, because childbirth here is not a joyful moment. Not at first. It is a crossing narrow, uncertain, blindfolded. You do not know who will reach the other side. You only hope. You hope the baby comes quickly. You hope the mother does not bleed too much. You hope the cord is not wrapped. You hope there is crying at the end. The kind that comes from the child, not the room. The midwife places her ear to. The belly, her fingers to the womb. She listens with her hands. She waits. The fire pops quietly. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once, then stops. Time drips slowly here. Pain has its own hours. There are no sterilized tools, no scalpels, no anesthesia. If the birth is difficult, the midwife uses her hands to turn the child, to ease the passage, to pull gently or firmly, depending on the need. If things go badly, there is little to be done. There may be prayers, holy relics placed on the chest, holy water dripped on the brow. But no magic, no miracle, just skill, luck, and the body's stubborn will die if the baby comes at the wrong angle. If it lodges, if it gasps, if the cord strangles, then the room grows very quiet. Not out of respect, but out of recognition. It is happening again. The risk has turned into reality. Even when a child is born whole, pink, and screaming, the fear does not lift immediately. You must still cut the cord with a dull blade. You must still bathe the baby in lukewarm water, not too cold, not too hot, and wrap it in cloths that were warmed by the fire, but may still be damp. You must wait for it to feed, and you must watch the mother, because she may bleed. Hours, later, days, the womb that worked so hard may not close. The blood may not stop. She may grow cold and pale and drift into stillness with the baby sleeping beside her, and then it is done. The gamble has been lost. Sometimes the baby lives. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes neither do Dot, and this is common. Not rare. Not tragic. In the modern sense of an unexpected catastrophe. It is tragic, yes, but expected. Commonplace. An ordinary death in a world that never promised survival. There's no hospital. There is no record. A neighbor digs the grave. A cloth is wrapped. A name, perhaps never spoken aloud, is whispered into the earth. And the mother, if she survives, tries again, later. Because she must. Because the family needs children. Needs workers. Needs sons and daughters and heirs. Because this is the rhythm of life here. Marriage, labor, loss, and repetition. And yet, for all its danger, birth is still marked with reverence. Quiet reverence, never celebration. The village women may bring a small offering, a crust of bread, a pouch of herbs, a scrap of linen for swaddling. They speak in soft voices, careful not to stir the air too sharply. There is a respect for what has just happened, or almost happened, or might happen still. The mother, once the worst has passed, will lie in her bed for days. This is the lying in period, not for comfort, but for necessity. Her body is weak, torn, her stomach aches. Her breasts swell and leak painfully. She sleeps often, but not well. The baby cries. The air is damp. The world outside continues, as if nothing happened. But for her, everything has shifted, and then, slowly, she returns to the casks of life. She stirs the pottage again. She walks to the well. She feeds chickens. The birth becomes a memory, a scar, a softness in the middle, of the year that was, for a time, terrifying. Dot, if the baby lives. It is not named immediately. Not always. Some wait days, some wait weeks. You do not grow too attached too quickly. Death can still come in the cradle. In the night, in the smoke-filled room where lungs too small cannot breathe well. So, you wait, you watch, you pray quietly. Not for joy, but for survival. Dot, and when the child smiles for the first time, or reaches or laughs, you allow yourself to feel something, not celebration, but relief. Dot, still. The memory of the birth stays in the bones. It is passed down in stories and warnings and whispered advice from mothers to daughters. Eat this root when the time comes. Tie this charm to the bedpost. Don't scream. breathe like this. These are the teachings. These are the tools. There is no science, only lineage, only survival. Childbirth is not rare, but neither is death. The two walk hand in hand, and always have. Now the candle is burned low. The room grows colder. The midwife has dozed off against the wall, her hands still curled loosely in her lap. The baby sleeps. The mother sleeps, and for a few hours perhaps all is well. But tomorrow will bring more. Another labor, another gamble, another silent prayer spoken between clenched teeth. You could be punished. Creatively, it's morning in the village square. The sky is low and gray, the kind of dull canvas that seems to hang just above the rooftops. Crows mutter on the church spire. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, thick with the smell of peat and damp wood. Beneath the frost, stiffened straw scattered along the road. The earth squelches underfoot, not loudly, just a soft, resigned squish. And in the center of the square, just off the path between the alehouse and the bakehouse, stands a pair of stocks, quiet, waiting. They're always there, even when empty. Their presence is constant, like the well or the bell tower, a part of the architecture of daily life. Constructed from thick oak, darkened by rain, rough to the touch, they hold the faint smell of old sweat and splinters. When not in use, the village children may sit on them, or run a stick along the edge. But everyone knows what they're for. And everyone watches when they're used. Punishment in this world is not quick, nor private. It is not the swift removal from society, not a barred cell behind heavy doors, but rather a placement at the very center of things. Punishment is seen. It is heard. And it is endured not for the sake of the law alone, but for the watching eyes of the village. Public. Shame was part of the process. Sometimes it was the point that the stocks are simple. A wooden frame with holes for ankles. The pillory is similar, but for the neck and hands. You are locked in place, not violently, but firmly. The wood closes with a dull clunk, and there you stay. Your back begins to ache. Your legs fall asleep. You itch but cannot scratch. The passers-by do not ignore you. That is not the expectation. They look. Sometimes they throw things. Soft at first. A turnip. A lump of earth. Sometimes something worse. You are not always told how long you will remain. A day. An afternoon. A night. Long enough for the lesson to settle into the bones. The punishment. Maybe for theft. For gossip. For disobedience. Or simply for being where you should not have been. The rules are not always written, but they are known. You feel them when you break them. In winter, the punishment is colder. In summer, hotter. In rain, it is miserable. There is no adjustment for the weather. Your skin may burn. Your lips may crack. Your feet may swell. And still you remain. Because the punishment is not just about you. It is about what others see when they pass. There are other forms too. The dunking stool, used most often for women. For scolds, they said. Or for those whose tongues wag too freely. It looks like a bench on an arm, balanced above the village pond. You are strapped in, dipped, lifted, dipped again. The water is not clean. It is thick with algae and old leaves and the lives of frogs. It shocks the breath from your lungs. It enters your ears. It numbs your fingers. And the onlookers laugh, not cruelly, not kindly, just as a way of passing the time. Branding is rarer, but it happens. A small iron heated in a brazier, pressed to the flesh, not to kill, just to mark. To remind the pain is intense but brief. The scar lasts longer. Longer still is the knowledge that your body now tells your story. Before your mouth ever opens, flogging is common enough to be mundane. A post in the square, a whip of knotted leather. You kneel. You are tied. You receive your lashes without ceremony. It is not theatrical. There is no need. Everyone knows what it means. The whip cracks. The crowd murmurs. Someone sells bread nearby. Life goes on. Execution is rare still. Not because crimes don't occur, but because death is considered final. And expensive. It removes a worker from the land. a mouth from the parish, a tithe from the church, and so death is reserved, kept behind glass, like a relic. When it does happen, it happens slowly. A hanging, a burning, a quiet procession with muffled steps leading out of the square to a spot on the hill. But that is not today. Today, there. Are only stocks that the person in them is young or old? It doesn't matter. Their face is still, embarrassed, not enraged. They shift occasionally, but they do not cry. The villagers pass without jeering, not always kindly, but not cruelly. Just with observation. They see the punishment and they log it away, as a warning, as a ritual, as something that keeps the order intact. Because punishment here is not about cruelty, not in the theatrical sense. It is about rhythm, about keeping the pattern of life from fraying at the edges. The village functions through repetition, through familiar roles, through predictability. When someone steps outside of that, through theft or disobedience or even stubbornness, the community responds by placing them back at the center, where everyone can look. And remember, even the punished understand, when released, they do not protest. They stretch stiff limbs, they rub raw wrists, they walk home slowly and silently. The punishment is done, but the echo lingers, and so you learn. From watching, from passing. From the dull creak of the pillory hinge, the soft thud of a root vegetable striking wood. You learn what not to say, where not to stand, what not to steal. You learn how much the body can endure, and how deep embarrassment can sink into the bones, but not all punishment is formal. There are social punishments too. Averted gazes, withheld bread, being left off the list when the feast is tallied. Sometimes silence is the sharpest lash, especially in a world where survival depends on others, and still always the village continues. The day rolls onward. The firewood is gathered, the ox is yoked. The pot begins to boil again. The church bell tolls softly in the mist. And somewhere in the square, the stocks stand empty once more. Until next time, rats were everywhere night falls. Not suddenly, but like a slow turning inward. The sun fades behind the thatched roofs, and the sky, already gray all day, deepens into ash, then soot, then coal. The village does not blaze with. A light on the darkness comes. There are no lamps flickering along the lanes, no golden windows twinkling in rows. There are a few candles, yes, a hearth or two, but mostly the dark arrives and nothing argues with it. People move slower, closer, to home. Voices drop to murmurs. The world becomes hushed inside the homes. It is warmer than outside, but not much. The fire smolders in the center of the room, not roaring, just whispering in embers. A heavy pot hangs over it, empty now, with only the ghost of cabbage remaining in the air. The straw mattress in the corner has been rearranged. A thick wool blanket rests on top, scratchy but comforting in its familiarity. The air smells of smoke and sweat, of old onions and drying herbs, but beneath all of it, there's another smell. Faint, sour, greasy, unmistakable. The rats have returned. They were never really gone. They never are. But now, with the light low and the voices softer, they make themselves known again. First, it is a sound, barely there, a soft skittering. Behind the wattle wall, then a creak, a tiny thud, the rustle of something squeezing between two beams. You pause, but only briefly. You know this sound. It is not alarming. It is routine. A small black shape dashes from under the bench to the shadows near the hearth. You catch it out of the corner of your eye, just the blur of fur in motion. It does not stop. It has done this before. It knows the way. Rats are not pets. They are not welcome. But they are a part of life, like mud or rain or the ache in your knees. You do not scream at them. You do not chase them unless they get bold. You simply accept that they are here, and that they will be here again tomorrow. They live beneath the floor, which is not really a floor at all, just packed earth. damp and uneven, covered in reeds or rushes or sometimes just scattered straw. There are gaps under the walls where the wood meets the stone. There are holes near the roof beams. They find their way in easily. They've been finding their way in for generations. At night. They come out in earnest, quietly, but not silently. You hear them in the thatch above you, scratching gently as they nest in the dry straw of the roof. You hear them beneath your bed, where the warm, hollow spaces near the hearth attract them. You hear them in the grain sacks, their small teeth, working patiently at the tightly tied cloth. Sometimes you hear the sudden collapse of a cup or spoon, knocked from a shelf by something unseen but expected. No one gasps. No one lights a candle. It is simply part of the night. You sleep anyway. Or try to, wrapped in your wool, on your side to keep your hip from aching, eyes closed, breath slow. You may even drift off until a tiny claw brushes your foot beneath the blanket. Or you feel a sudden scurry across the thatch just above your head. Few of them may quarrel in the corner, squeaking, quick, then done. Always brief, always returning to quiet. The rats are not always afraid. They have grown used to people. They move with purpose, not panic. Some are large, fatter than you'd like to admit. Their tails are long and pink and hairless, like twisted. Cords of old meat. Their fur is coarse. They carry fleas. You know this. Everyone knows this. You have seen the bites on your ankles. You have scratched at them in your sleep, in the colder months. They grow bolder. The competition for warmth drives them closer. You find signs of them in the morning, a corner of your bread nibbled away, even though it was wrapped and tucked. Above the mantel, small droppings on the edge of your bed frame. A hole in the wall just slightly larger than before. The cat catches one, sometimes, not often. Cats do not chase rats for you, not out of affection. They do it because they are hungry, too. The cats, for their part, are not like the ones you know today. They are not soft companions. They do not curl beside you for comfort. They do not purr on command. They are wiry, suspicious, semi-feral creatures. They keep their own hours. They come and go without asking. You may feed them, but they will not always eat. They do not sit on laps. They patrol. They sleep in the rafters. They watch the holes. They watch the rats, and still, the rats persist. They chew at everything. Wood, cloth, leather. You check your boots in the morning, not out of habit, but necessity. One bite, and the heel may be ruined. They climb too, up the bed legs, across. The beams, onto the shelves where your dried meat hangs, or your precious bit of cheese waits beneath a cloth. They chew through walls to get at it. They chew through sacks and baskets and ropes. They chew through anything. You have tried to keep them out. Everyone has. You've stuffed rags in the cracks. You've scattered herbs, mint, wormwood, rue. The old women say rats don't like the smell. But the rats come anyway. Perhaps they do not mind. Or perhaps they are too hungry to care, and it isn't just your home. The church has rats. The alehouse. The mill. Even the manor house has them, though they pretend otherwise. You have heard them in the rafters during Mass. You have seen them dart across the path during harvest. You found one drowned in the water barrel more than once, bloated, gray, still. There are stories, of course, of rats stealing infants, of rats biting the faces of the dead, of rats whispering in corners when no one else is near. You don't believe all of them, but some you believe more than you'd like. And then there is the plague. Not now, not every year. But some years it comes. Fast, black, quiet at first. Then loud, coughing, buboes, death in days. And when does, the rats seem more present than ever. They do not cause it, not exactly. But they carry the fleas that do. And the fleas ride on the backs of rats like passengers bound for every home in the village. You do not fear the rats themselves. But what they bring, what follows in their wake, that you fear, quietly, with respect. The kind of fear that does not shout. The kind that places your bread just a little higher. The kind that teaches you to listen more carefully at night. And still, life continues. You wake, you sweep the corners, you shake out your blanket. You cook, you work, you walk. You leave the rats to their world, and they leave you just enough space to live in yours. Because this is the truth. Rats were not a problem to be solved. They were a condition to be endured, like the cold, like the hunger, like a ache in your teeth. They were woven into the rhythms of medieval life, scratching softly beneath the floorboards of every story ever told. And so tonight, you lie back down. You pull the blanket close. You tuck your hands in tight beneath your chest, where nothing can brush them. You close your eyes, and somewhere near the fire's edge, a soft squeak says hello again. You'd probably never travel more than 20 miles. The road is dry today. Just the sun hasn't warmed it much. But at least the rain has held off, and the surface, though uneven and rutted with the grooves of cartwheels, is not quite mud, only cracked earth, a thin crust that crunches slightly. Underfoot, you pull your cloak tighter against the wind, which smells faintly of sheep dung and wood smoke, and you walk slowly, because there's no other way. You're not going far. Almost no one ever does that, most people, if they are lucky enough to grow. Old will live their entire lives within a few dusty miles of where they were born. Not because of fear, though there is fear. Not because of laziness, there is no time for that. But because travel is hard and expensive and uncertain. The road is not a ribbon of freedom. It is a long, aching trail of questions. You go when you must and rarely otherwise dot in your village. The world consists of a few familiar paths. One to the mill, where the grain is ground beneath ancient stones that sigh with every turn. One to the church, where the bell tolls gently across the fields at midday. One to the forest edge, where wood is gathered and herbs are picked, though not too deep, not too far. And one, the longest, leading slowly to the next village over, a place that smells different and speaks almost the same, but not quite. A journey of 4 hours on foot, maybe 5. That is the edge of your known world that you know of other places. Of course, names passed down like stories. York, London, Rome, the Holy Land. But these are not destinations. They are ideas. Places wrapped in cloth, shining with symbols, never to be seen with your own eyes. You may hear of a cousin's cousin who once went to the market in the city, or a night passing through, headed to the coast. But you do not go. There's no reason to. Your work is here. Your food is here. Your church, your rave, your rhythm, all here dot the act of leaving is not easy. You have no horse unless you are unusually fortunate, and even then it is probably shared, borrowed, or meant for pulling rather than riding. You walk, with a stick perhaps, in shoes with leather soles that blister and crack in the cold. Your feet are your travel. They are slow. And they complain. There are no maps in your cottage, no signs along the road. Distances are measured by stories. How long it takes to get to the next parish if you leave before first light, or how many days it takes to reach the fair if you sleep in the hedgerows along the way. Time bends with the road. 1 mile in. Summer is not the same as 1 mile in spring flood. A journey is never certain, and the road itself is not tame. It is not lined with taverns or resting places. It is lined with brambles, with watchers, with the unknown. Bandits are not just myths. Wolves, in some places, still prowl in lean years. Strangers are not expected, and sometimes not welcomed. And when you arrive, if you do, you will be noticed. Because you are out of place, and that in this world is not a small thing. Even merchants who travel more than most do not do so lightly. They plan around the seasons. They load carts with care. They wait for others to join them. Safety in numbers. Travel is a kind of pilgrimage, whether for trade, religion, or desperation. It is not for leisure. There is no holiday. There's only necessity, and yet sometimes people do go, not far. But far enough to feel it. A wedding in another parish, a festival, a burial. You wear your best tunic, the one without patches. You carry bread and dried apples in a cloth. You walk in silence or in song, depending on your mood. And when you return, feet blistered, cloak damp, you feel tired in a way that is strange. Not from work, but from motion. Pilgrims are the ones who truly travel. They move toward shrines, toward bones, toward blessings. They carry staffs and wear badges, signs of their destination etched in tin or lid. They stay in strangers' barns or under the eaves of monasteries. They walk hundreds of miles, sometimes more, for reasons both. Known and unknowable, to be healed, to be forgiven, to be seen. They are respected, but also pitied. A long journey is a kind of wound, noble, but not enviable. And for those in castles and courts in robes of fur and rings of gold, even they do not travel easily. Their roads are wider, perhaps, and they have horses, guards, litters, but still the motion wears them. Still the journey takes its toll. Roads are rough, for all that there's a word that people use, home. But it does not mean what it might now. It does not mean a building with walls. It means here. It means this place, with its smells and paths and quiet routines. Home is not portable. It does not move with you. You leave it behind when you go. And when you return, if you return, it is waiting, but always slightly changed. And so most choose to stay. Not out of fear, not always, but because staying is easier. Staying is safer. Staying is familiar. There is beauty in it. A rhythm, the shape of every fence post, where the snow melts last on the north side of the smithy. You know how the light falls across the church door in October. You know who will greet you on the path and what they will say. What grows where and when and why. But you do not know what lies beyond the next village. Not really. You may imagine hills, or markets, or thieves, or saints. But they are imagined, and they stay that way for those few who leave, truly leave. There's a kind of unmooring. You've seen them return, sometimes, eyes a little wider, feet more worn. They speak with new words, or with fewer. They walk a little differently. They talk of ships and cities and the price of foreign salt. You listen, but only for a while. Then the bread needs kneading, the goat needs feeding, the fire needs tending, and the road remains. Silent, dusty. Patient. Tomorrow you might walk it, just a little, to the edge of the field. To the woods, to the place where the stones change color and the wind feels different, but you will turn back, not because of fear. Because of familiarity, because of gravity. You were born here, you will likely die here, and in between you walk a narrow circle. But in that circle is everything you need, or everything you're allowed to want. Winter was, especially on fun winter, does not begin all at once. It seeps. It begins as a shift in the wind, subtle, but biting, slipping in through the gaps. In the wall where the daub has crumbled slightly, where straw pokes out, damp and resigned. You might wake one morning and find the hearth colder than usual, not frozen, just quiet. You run your hands over the ashes. They're soft and dead. Even the coals have lost their glow. And, without needing to look outside, that the season has turned. The days grow shorter, of course. But it's not the darkness that wears you down. It's the stillness. The fields are still. The animals are still. The air is still. Everything pauses. Not like a rest. More like a waiting. The cold itself is not theatrical. It doesn't come crashing in like a wave. It settles slowly, like a second skin. You feel it in your toes first, even under 2 layers of wool, even with straw stuffed into your shoes. Then your fingertips, no matter how tightly you keep them in your sleeves, your breath fogs in the air. You pull your hood tighter. It helps. A little at night. There's no relief. You do not sleep naked or even half-dressed. You sleep in everything. Tunic, undershirt, stockings, hat if you have one. And still, the cold finds you. Through the stones, through the thatch, through the ground. You curl up tightly, knees to chest, arms folded, fingers between thighs. You share heat if you can, a spouse, a sibling, a child, but it's never enough. Your blanket is wool, scratchy and thin, patched and often damp. The straw mattress beneath you is no better, flattened, sour, full of things you'd rather not name. It rustles when you shift, it smells of mold, and still it's all you have. The wind whistles under the door some nights. Other times it hisses down the chimney, stirring the embers, making them sigh but never flame. If you're lucky, there's a log or two left. You use them sparingly. You sit close to the fire and hope the warmth will sink into your bones. It rarely does. Firewood is a precious thing in winter, and dry wood, even more so. Gathering it is a slow and bitter task. You walk to the woods with numb hands, break off what you can, not too much, or you'll draw attention and haul it home. If it's damp, you leave it near the hearth to dry and wait, and wait, and wait. Ash and alder burn better than pine. Everyone knows that, but you burn what you can find. Sometimes it smokes. Sometimes it hisses. Sometimes it does almost nothing at all. You pile it down anyway. Because the idea of warmth is worth it. Even when the reality falls short, the animals suffer too. The cow huddles in her stall, breath clouding in the air. Chickens sit still, feathers puffed, eyes dull. You do what you can. Give them scraps. Muck out the straw. Keep them alive. Because come spring, you'll need them. In the mornings. The water barrel is often frozen. A thin film of ice, maybe thicker. You crack it gently, using a stick, trying not to spill any. Every drop counts. You save the warmest water for cooking, when you can. But washing, that's forgotten. You do not wash in winter unless you absolutely must. It is too cold. And besides, everything smells the same. Smoke, sweat, dust, wool. One scent woven to the season. Food is ... limited. What you stored in? Autumn is all you have. Cabbage, dried beans, onions braided and hanging from the ceiling. Salted meat. If you were lucky enough to slaughter a pig, dried apples. Maybe a little barley. A few shriveled roots. You stretch every bite. Porridge, mostly. Broth when you can. You save the good things, the dried herbs, the salted fat for the feasts. Christmas, Epiphany, Candlemas, small lights in the dark. But most days, it's the same bowl, scraped clean with the edge of a wooden spoon and a long silence afterward. Your body changes in winter. It softens and stiffens at once. You move less. Your joints ache more. You feel older, not dramatically, just slowly, like the wood settling in the beams above you. You hear it creak sometimes. You think about your knees. They creak. Time does something strange in winter. The days feel short, but the season feels long. The sun is pale and low, when it appears at all. You mark time by candle stubs, by prayers, by when the frost melts from the south wall. You forget the exact date. You know only that it is still not spring. You do what work you can. Mend a tunic, patch a boot, twist rope from old flax. Pick lice from your child's hair. Scrape soot from the pots. Keep busy, because if you stop moving even for a little, while the cold catches up to you again, and it lingers. Illness comes more in winter, a cough that never leaves, a fever that starts slow and then blooms. You keep to your bed. You drink warm beer. Someone says a prayer. That's all you can do. And if you survive, you're weaker for it. But alive, you might visit the church. Wrap yourself tightly. Walk slow. Inside, it's no warmer. Stone walls hold the cold, but there is comfort in the sameness. The candles flicker. The incense clings to the air. The priest's voice echoes softly. And for a while, you forget your toes are numb-got children grow quieter in winter. They do not run. They sit, wrapped in whatever scraps they've been given, staring at the fire or scratching at the frost on the window. They learn to wait. Waiting is a winter skill. The old say, this one's colder than the last. They always say that. But sometimes it's true. Sometimes the well freezes. Sometimes the firewood runs out. Sometimes a neighbor does not open their door in the morning. You hear about it later, quietly dot still. There are moments, brief ones, that feel almost kind. A thaw, sudden and wet, when the snow drips from the eaves like rain. A sunbeam, through the smoke hole. A loaf baked just right, steaming on the table. A song hummed while mending, not loud, but steady. Little things. Enough. You do not expect joy in winter, but you accept it. It is part of the rhythm. Spring will come. Not yet. But soon. The frost will lift. The mud will return. The hens will lay again. The cow will swell with milk. You will plant. You will ache. You will begin again. But for now you stay still. You tuck your hands deep into your sleeves. You watch the fire fade, then flare, then fade again. You wrap yourself tighter, and you sleep, not because it is peaceful, but because there is nothing else. Death was calm in the morning, begins as it always does. The same dull light through the smoke hole, the same clatter of hens beyond the door. You rise, slowly, your joints aching not from illness, but from life. The cold has settled in your knees. You stretch. You cough. You begin the day, and somewhere a few houses down, a child is not waking up. You do not panic when you hear the news. You simply pause in the middle of lighting the fire or breaking the ice in the water barrel, and you nod. You might say a prayer or whisper a soft sound that doesn't really mean anything, and then you continue. Because death is not a visitor here. It is a neighbor dot in the medieval world. You do not grow up fearing death. You grow up knowing it, not in a philosophical way, not through sermons or symbols, but physically, intimately. It's there, in the corner of the room, under the blankets, behind the door. It is as ordinary as hunger, as aches, as wood smoke. You lose people young. And often, children die before they're named. Infants fail to breathe after birth. Some live days, some weeks, some just hours. You've seen it. Everyone has. There is weeping, yes. There is grief, but there is no surprise. The women gather around the mother, and they know what to do. They've done it before. You might give the baby a name quickly, in case it dies. You might delay the baptism, in case it dies. Either way, you're preparing. And if the baby lives, you wait again. Because even a child who survives birth may not survive the winter, or a fever, or teething, or a bad cough, or nothing at all. Illnesses come and go like clouds. Sometimes they pass, sometimes they stay. You do not understand them, not really. You call them humors. You blame the air, the stars, the imbalance of bile. You use herbs, poultices, whispered prayers, but mostly you wait. And sometimes people die. Adults go, too. A wound festers. A cold lingers. A fall leads to fever. A cough deepens. And that's it. There's no doctor, no hospital, no ambulance arriving to break the silence. There's only the room, the patient, the watchers, and the waiting. Death is not hidden away. It happens in the same space where you cook and sleep and mend. You watch it. You hear the breathing slow. You see the face change. You smell it. Sometimes. The last hours have their own smell, not strong, but unmistakable. And when it's done, you do not call strangers. You do not send the body away. You wash it, carefully, with warm water if there is any. You dress it in simple cloth. You place a coin, perhaps, if the custom calls for it. You close the eyes. You fold the hands. You light a candle dot sometimes. There's wailing. Sometimes, just silence. You carry the body, wrapped in linen, to the churchyard. Not far. You dig with your own hands, if needed, or the sexton helps. There are no headstones, for most. Just a wooden cross, if anything. The name may be remembered, or not. The place certainly will fade. The earth takes them back dot, and life continues. There's no dramatic mourning period. You do not wear black. You do not withdraw from the world. You return to the field, to the hearth, to the same cracked bowl and spoon. You might pause for a moment, looking at the empty corner of the room. Then the fire needs tending. So you tend it. You remember them, yes. But quietly. The names blur over time. You forget the exact shade of their voice. You forget the way they walked. You remember only the shape they left behind, the place they used to sit, the chore they used to do, the silence they leave now. Even births and deaths happen in the same room. There's no separation of sacred and ordinary. You might be born on a straw mattress under a thatched roof and buried in the same dirt that once grew your cabbage. It is not tragic. It is simply the cycle. Plagues come, too. Not every year, but often enough. Sometimes just a fever that spreads village to village. Sometimes worse. In the bad years, people fall quickly. The air feels heavier. The church bell rings more often. There are fewer candles lit at night. You see more carts carrying wrapped bodies. You avoid touching too much. You say extra prayers. But still it comes, and then it passes, and things go back to normal. Or what counts as normal. Graveyards are quiet places, but not avoided. You pass through them on your way to Mass. You kneel beside your grandmother's grave or your child's or your own mother's, and you mutter your lines. There are no marble monuments, just grass. And time that you see the bones, unearthed by rain or by accident, you do not scream, you cover them again, or you let them be. They are part of the place. Death does not feel like a stranger. It feels like part of the furniture. You know it will come for you. Not in some faraway moment, but eventually, and likely not when you are very old, if you make it that far. Your body wears out, your teeth fall, your back bends, you slow. And one day, you simply do not get up. Or you fall, or you cough, or you sleep too long. You may not be afraid, or you may be, but you are never shocked. The priest says there is heaven. The church says there is order. But you don't think much about the theology. You think about the practical things. Who will feed the animals when you're gone? Who will finish weaving the cloth? Will someone remember to pass down the story of the time you got caught in the storm on Michaelmas and lost your boot in the mire? Maybe not Dot, but in your last days. If you're lucky enough to have last days, you lie in your bed. The same bed where your children were born. The same bed where your spouse once slept. The same bed where the lice live now. You breathe slowly. You hear the wind in the thatch. You listen for the church bell dot, and when it happens, it happens. Those around you do not scream. They move quietly. They whisper to each other. They cover your face. They sit beside you a while, not saying much. And then, eventually, someone rises. Someone finds the cloth. Someone lights the candle dot. It is all very quiet and slow. And familiar Dot the Lost does not shake the earth. The chickens still cluck. The water still boils. A neighbor knocks with a pot to return. Life continues, always Dot, and in that way, death is not frightening. It is simply another part of the day. Like fetching water. Like mending wool. Like closing your eyes at night, knowing the fire may go out, but still curling beneath your thin blanket, and sleeping anyway. Work was endless. The rooster doesn't wake you. You're already half awake by the time it crows, the kind of waking that happens slowly, like smoke rising from damp wood. Your eyes aren't open yet, but your ears know. The rooster. The soft cough of someone near the hearth. The creak of a wooden door. The scrape of a stool across the stone. You stretch, but carefully. Your back is stiff. Your hands curl oddly. They often do. You sleep in the same clothes you wear for work, and they hold the scent of yesterday's sweat and straw and smoke. The blanket is thin, the straw beneath you thinner, and still you rise. There's no question of rest. You work because you must, not for success, not for glory. Not even to get ahead, because ahead is not a place that exists for you. You work to stay level, to keep hunger from the door, to keep the roof from sagging. One more season Dot, and that is enough Dot. Your feet find the floor. Cold, rough, always. You put on your shoes, if you have them. Soft leather turned stiff with time, with water, with use. You tie them carefully. The laces are made from old thread, twisted again and again. They fray, But they hold dot breakfast is not a meal. It is more of a moment, maybe yesterday's bread. Hard now. You soak it in warm beer, if there is any. You chew slowly, silently. You look at the fire. You begin. If you're a man, you walk to the field. The land is not yours. It belongs to the Lord, or to the church, or to someone whose name you know, only from tax time, but it's yours to tend, to reap. You've done it since you were old enough to walk in a straight line. You do not use a plow alone. You guide it with oxen, with neighbors. The blade drags through the earth, heavy and slow. It doesn't cut cleanly. The soil is stubborn. You lean in. Your shoulders hurt. They always hurt. You bend often. To pull weeds. To scatter seed. To pick up stones. Your back never fully straightens anymore. You carry tools across the field. A wooden hoe, a rusting sickle, a dull knife. You sharpen them when you can. With a whetstone you've used for years, it's smoother now. Like your hands do not feel pain like they used to. They are numb in places, split in others. The nails are dark, the skin is thick. They are not beautiful, but they are strong. If you're a woman, your work is no lighter, just closer to home. You need bread in the morning. You churn butter. If you have milk, you fetch water, always water. From the stream, from the well, from the rain barrel, lined with green. You carry it in wooden buckets, sloshing and cold. You wash clothes by hand, in water that steals the heat from your fingers. You mend tunics. You spin thread. You sweep the floor, though it never stays clean. Dust returns like a tide. Straw shifts underfoot. The corners stay dark. You cook over a fire with smoke in your eyes. The pot is heavy. The food is plain. Pottage, most days. Barley, leeks. Salt, if you're lucky. A bit of bone for flavor. You stir slowly. You feed the children first. If you're both working, and most are, you do it side by side. And apart. And again, you switch places as needed. You carry the baby on your back, wrapped in wool. You keep working. Even the children work. Small hands gathering eggs, turning spits, feeding pigs. Picking stones from fields, they don't call it chores. They don't know the word, they just do what's expected. And when they're tired, they sit, but not for long. Some days are harder than others. Harvest days, haymaking, shearing, the sheep, digging ditches for drainage, repairing the roof with sod after a storm. On those days, your body becomes something else, not your own, just a tool. It moves because it must. You don't count the hours. The sun tells you what to do. When it's up, you work. When it's low, you slow down. And when it sets, you stop, not because the work is done, but because you cannot see it anymore. On winter days, you work less in the fields, but more indoors, mending, darning, scraping hides, making candles, twisting rope. There is no season without labor. Only different kinds of tired dot your body carries the story of this life. A finger bent from an old break. A tooth missing. A scar across the shin from a bad hoe swing. You do not call them injuries. You call them reminders. The church calendar gives you holy days, saints' days, feast days, days of rest. But they are not idle. On feast days, you cook more. On rest days, you walk to mass, long distances in all weather. You kneel. You stand. You sing. You return. When someone dies, you dig the grave. When someone marries, you clean the hall. When the Lord comes through the village, you sweep the lane. Work shifts shape, but never stops. Even sleep is part of the cycle. You do not fall asleep from comfort. You fall asleep from exhaustion. Your limbs are too heavy to move. Your eyes too dry to blink. You sleep hard, and then wake up early, and begin again. You do not speak of dreams that no one asks you what you want to be. You are what you are: a farmer, a wife, a shepherd, a weaver, a smith, a servant. If your father dug clay, you dig clay. If your mother spun flax, you spin flax. If the Lord tells you to dig a ditch, you dig it. There's no shame in labor, only necessity. You are not alone in it. The village works together. You trade help, you lend tools, you share bread, you laugh, sometimes, not often, but sometimes, at the absurdness of it all. A sheep that got stuck in the hedge, a chicken that laid an egg on the roof, a child who fell into the well and came out covered in moss. But even laughter is a kind of labor. It costs something. When you are old, if you live long enough, you do less, you sit more. But you still help. You patch things. You tell others. How? You teach by doing. Your hands do not rest until they must dot, and then one day they do. But the work does not stop dot, it passes to others. The child you raised, the neighbor's son, the girl with the clever fingers who always braided faster than you did. They carry the work forward, like a torch that doesn't warm, but lights the path just enough to keep going. You wonder sometimes what it would feel like not to work, to wake and lie still, to walk slowly just because you want to sit by the fire while someone else tends it, but the thought is small, and it passes because you have water to fetch, and barley to grind, and a calf that will not stop crying dot, so you stand up dot and begin again. Religion ruled everything. The bell rings dot, it doesn't surprise you. It never does. You heard it every morning for as long as you can remember. Not just one bell, but a sequence, a pattern. Matins, lauds, prime, tierce. The hours go on. The bell does not shout, it does not demand. It simply calls, a soft command, like dew settling on thatched dot. It is not just time that the bell governs, it is life. It shapes the rhythm of your waking and your sleeping, your eating and your silence, your prayers and your sins, even your fears. Religion is not something you choose. It is the world itself. It is the air. It is the language spoken around you. Before you knew what words were, it is in the food you do not eat on Fridays, in the ash on your forehead, in the relic behind the altar that no one sees but everyone respects. You do not question it. Not because you are blind, but because there is nothing outside of it. God is not a part of life. He is the reason for it. Your days begin in reverence, a whispered prayer as you open your eyes, a cross traced over your chest, the small hope that today your soul will stay clean, or at least cleaner than yesterday. The week is not just a list of days. It's a sacred pattern. Sunday is for worship, Monday for humility, Tuesday for labor, Wednesday for reflection, Thursday for preparation, Friday for fasting, Saturday for the Virgin. Each day is touched by something greater than weather or season. You don't merely work and rest, you serve and remember. Even silence has meaning. And then there are the feast days, more than 100 each year, saint days, martyr days, holy days. They interrupt the ordinary, sometimes with joy, sometimes with dread. You mark them not with calendars, but with signs, the return of swallows, the first frost, the blooming of elderflower, the way the priest changes his robe. You fast often, more often than you eat well. No meat on Fridays, Lenten meals of broth and bread, Advent days when your stomach grumbles louder than the evening hymn. Fasting is not a punishment. It is a reminder that your body is clay and your soul is what matters. Sometimes you feast, not often. A wedding, a patron saint's day, a miracle remembered. Then the tables are spread and music plays and you drink deeply, but always, with the knowledge that this joy too is fleeting. The church is not a place you visit. It is the center of your village, your time, your thought. You pass it daily, you enter it weekly. You see it spire from the fields like a finger pointing endlessly toward heaven. Inside, it is cold, always, stone and silence. Candles burn slowly in iron holders. The air smells of wax, damp wood, and old incense. You do not understand every word the priest says. Latin is not your tongue. But you understand the feeling, the kneeling, the rising, the bowing of heads, the sound of 1,000 years behind every chant. And there are rituals, many of them. Holy water splashed on the brow. Bread turned sacred. Wine, not wine. The confessional, dark and wooden like a cupboard for guilt. You enter, you whisper. You emerge later, but not light. Sin is a shadow you never fully outrun. Even thoughts can betray you. Pride, envy, lust. Even when you do nothing wrong, you wonder, have I thought wrongly? Have I forgotten a prayer? Did I speak too sharply? To the butcher's boy, you try to be good. You try not to die with sin on your soul, because death is not the end. You knew this hell is not abstract. It is fire, smoke, screams. Your priest does not soften the image, nor do the stained glass windows, nor the wooden carvings. Demons are carved into the edges of the pulpit, horns, teeth, claws. You are told, often to be afraid, but also to trust. That God sees your struggle, that the saints intercede, that the Virgin Mary watches, quietly, from her niche above the altar, that Jesus suffered more than you do, and that your own suffering is therefore. Holy dot, so you light a candle. You murmur a psalm. You make the side of the cross when lightning strikes, and if you can afford it, or even if you can't, you give coins to the church, or a labor, or wool, or a portion of grain, a tithe. Not out of fear, necessarily, but because it is expected, and because somewhere deep down you believe it matters. The church is also your record keeper. It knows when you were born, when you married, when your child was baptized, when your neighbor died. It is the church that announces births, deaths, plagues, wars, fasts. It is the church that decides which days you may marry, which foods you may eat, which songs you may sing. If a toothache worsens, you may pray to Saint Apollonia. If your cow dies in labor, Saint Bridget may help. For eyes, it's Saint Lucy. For lost things, Saint Anthony. You remember these not because you've read them, but because your grandmother whispered them as she stirred the soup, even the seasons. Bend to God. Spring is for rebirth. Easter, the resurrection. Lent before it, long and hungry. Summer is for. Saints, Joan, Benedict, Mary Magdalene. Days warm with promise, but also sweat. Autumn brings Michaelmas, a reminder of mortality. Winter brings Advent. A darkness waiting for light, songs in cold chapels, fasting beside the fire, the smell of pine and wax. And then the cycle begins again. If someone breaks the laws of God, punishment is not just earthly, it's eternal. Heresy is not a crime of opinion, but of danger. You do not question the Trinity. You do not speak against the sacraments. You do not read strange books. If you do, you might burn. Literally, you've heard the stories. But mostly, religion is not fire. It is not thunder. It is not dromedare. It is dust motes and chapel light. The sound of a hymn half remembered. The feel of your knees on stone. A candle melting slowly in the dark. The scent of rosemary hung over the door to ward off spirits. It is the comfort of repetition, of doing what your parents did. What theirs did. What theirs did. It is a world you live in, not think about. Even your name might be religious. John, Mary, Agnes, Peter, saints, all of them. You are named not for personality, but for protection. Your first moments are shaped by faith. Your last too. When you die, the priest comes. He gives you oil. He murmurs the rites. He places your body in the ground, not just to rest, but to wait for the end, for the return, for the judgment. The soil is cold, but the soul is warmed by promise. And so you go on. You do not know much of the world outside your parish, but you know the holy days, you know the rhythm, you know when to bow, when to fast, when to cross yourself. And in this, there is peace of a kind. The bell rings again. You listen, you stand, you bow your head. And yet, people lived it is night. Again, or near enough, the light is low. The fire, if there is one, has settled into red embers and faint gray breath. There's not much heat left in it, but you keep your feet close anyway. Just for the idea of warmth. Just to remember it. Outside, there's only the wind. It sighs along the thatch and finds every crack between the boards. The air tastes of old smoke, boiled cabbage, and something woolly, like sheep or damp tunic. Or both. Someone coughs in the corner, not harshly. Just a small reminder that lungs are tired things. But even here, people live. They live in the cramped hush of one-room homes and long dark halls, in drafty cottages and crumbling inns, in stone monasteries where footsteps echo for hours, in market towns that smell of ale and dung and old onions, in forests, on coasts, along river bends where the fog never quite lifts. They live in spite of it all, or because of it. The days have been hard. You've heard that. You've walked through them yourself. The mud mornings, the gnawing winters, the aching teeth and endless labor. You've seen the cold fingers, the dull eyes, the blood that will not clot. You've heard the rats. You've watched mothers bury children. You've heard prayers muttered through cracked lips. You've eaten broth that tastes of nothing. And you've drunk ale just to feel full. You've lived that life in imagination. Or in memory, and it was not easy, Dot, and yet there is something soft here. Something slow and stubborn, Dot, because in all this roughness, the soot, the salt, the scratch, there is still time for living, Dot, by the hearth. Someone hums. You can't make out the tune, but it rocks gently, like a cradle being pushed by. Tired foot. It's not a performance. It's not for show. It's just a sound to keep silence from closing in too tight, Dot, children. The ones who've made it past their 5th year sit on the floor, legs crossed, chewing whatever bit of bread or dried fruit is left. They're dirty, yes. Their hands are crusted with soil. Their knees are bruised, but they smile, sometimes. They giggle when the fire pops. And in the shadows, someone tells a story, Doc. It's not a new story. They rarely are. It might be about a fox that tricks a knight, or a saint who bled flowers, or a girl who climbed a mountain to ask the moon for a miracle. You've heard it before, but you listen anyway. Because stories are more than diversion. They're inheritance, comfort. A kind of map, the telling of them is slow, winding, filled with pauses and soft repetition. The voice that tells it might be old, might be hoarse, might be missing teeth, but it tells it just the same. Because that too is living. You hear the creak of a spinning wheel, the scrape of a spoon against a clay bowl, the soft rustle of straw as someone shifts in their bed a bit. You smell the faint sweetness of apple peel, drying for winter, the sour tang of fermenting cabbage, the honest, bitter breath of someone asleep beside you. And still, people live. They make things. They carve spoons and stitch seams and shape bread loaves with thick fingers. They brew and shear and dye and mend. They fix what breaks. They wear what scratches. They learn, not from books, but from hands in time. And sometimes they laugh, a dry, crinkling kind of laugh. Not loud, not wild, but real. At a joke told. Poorly, at a goat who's found its way into the house again. At a fart, at a memory they fall in love too, in their way, quietly, over seasons, not sparks. They pass each other in the fields, at the well, at the Sunday Mass. They notice a voice, a kindness, a callous hand that moves gently. And that's all it takes. They marry sometimes, sometimes not. But they live in rhythm with animals. Sheep that bleat at the wrong hour, cows that need coaxing, cats that yell through the night, dogs that guard scraps like gold, chickens that sometimes sleep in your bed when the winter's too cruel. They live with the land, the suck of mud on boots, the smell of plowed earth, the ache of planting time, and the sigh of harvest. They live in faith, not always because they believe deeply, but because it gives the days a shape. Because it gives death a place to go, and they live in memory of those who've gone. Of years when the barley grew tall. Of the night the comet passed overhead and no one slept. Of the plague, of the feast. Of the child who laughed in her sleep. Living in the Middle Ages was not romantic. It was not noble. It was not candlelit poetry and grand quest. It was cold. It was repetitive. It was uncomfortable. And yet, a lullaby is sung, low and cracked, while someone grinds herbs by the fire. A comb pulls gently through tangled hair. A rosary is fingered slowly under a blanket. Two hands hold. One face rests on another's shoulder. A child draws a sun in the dirt, even though no one taught them what it looks like. A loaf rises. A pot simmers. The moon spills its light on the roof. And nothing dramatic happens. People lived and not just survived, but lived in the smell of rye and onion, in the way a grandmother pats a child's head, in a song about a robin that no one quite remembers the ending to. In the deep silence after the evening bell. Yes, there was rot and pain and teeth that broke and water that killed and rules that strangled, but there was also time to sit time to kneel, time to hum time to hope, even when nothing justified it. And maybe that is enough so tonight, as you lie under your own roof, not thatched, not drafty, with clean sheets and brushed teeth and books waiting to be read, think not of the horrors you've heard across this long journey. Think of the ember. The spoon. The hush. The love that happened in places too poor to name it, and let yourself rest.